The emergency council chamber aboard the Galactic Federation's primary station buzzed with tension as representatives from 37 different species gathered around the holographic display. Admiral Zephyx of the Catherian Empire, his blue-scaled hands trembling slightly, stood before the assembled delegates with news that would shake the foundation of everything they believed about the galaxy. "Esteemed colleagues," Zephyx began, his voice carrying the weight of 1,000 defeated fleets, "I come before you today to report the complete annihilation of our expeditionary force sent to investigate the Sol system." A collective gasp rippled through the chamber. The Terralian ambassador, her crystalline form shimmering with disbelief, spoke first. "Complete annihilation? That's impossible, Admiral. Your fleet consisted of over 300 vessels, including 12 dreadnoughts." Zephyx's expression darkened. "Indeed, 300 of our finest ships, equipped with the most advanced technology the Catherian Empire has ever produced, all destroyed within 47 minutes of entering what the inhabitants call their solar system." The Vorthon representative, a being of pure energy contained within a metallic exoskeleton, flickered with agitation. "You're telling us that these humans managed to destroy an entire Catherian battle fleet, the same fleet that conquered the Argenti Nebula and brought the crystalline worlds to their knees?" "That is exactly what I'm telling you," Zephyx replied grimly. "But that's not the worst of it. They didn't just destroy our ships, they captured our survivors, studied our technology, and then sent back a single escape pod with a message." The chamber fell silent. Even the ambient hum of the station's systems seemed to quiet as everyone waited for the Admiral to continue. Zephyx activated a holographic display that showed a simple text message in over 400 different galactic languages. The words were identical in each translation. "Stay out. This is your only warning." Chancellor Mordak of the Hegemony Alliance, his massive form towering over the other delegates, slammed his fist on the table. "This is preposterous. No single species could possibly stand against the combined might of our fleets. These humans must have some weakness we can exploit." "That's exactly what we thought," Zephyx said bitterly. "Which is why we sent our best intelligence operatives to gather information about these humans before launching our attack. What we discovered should have been our first warning." The Admiral activated another display, this one showing a detailed star map of the local galactic arm. "For the past 3,000 years, not a single galactic civilization has ventured into the region of space surrounding the Sol system. We always assumed it was because of the dangerous stellar phenomena in that sector, or perhaps because it was too far from the major trade routes." Ambassador Lyrics of the Trade Consortium, her tentacles writhing with curiosity, leaned forward. "Are you suggesting that we've been unconsciously avoiding human space?" "Not unconsciously," Zephyx corrected. "Every exploration mission, every trade expedition, every military campaign that was supposed to pass through that region was mysteriously redirected, canceled, or met with equipment failures. We thought it was coincidence. We thought it was bad luck. We never realized it was them." The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembled delegates. Species that had explored every corner of the galaxy, that had mapped stellar phenomena millions of light years away, had somehow never set foot in a region of space barely 50 light years from some of their most important worlds. "How is that possible?" demanded Governor Thale of the Outer Rim Territories. "Our exploration protocols are designed to map every system, every planet." "Because they were watching us," Zephyx said quietly. "Our intelligence teams discovered evidence of human monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. Devices so sophisticated that our best sensors couldn't detect them. They've been studying us for millennia, learning our languages, our technologies, our weaknesses. While we were congratulating ourselves on being the masters of the galaxy, they were cataloging every ship design, every weapon system, every tactical doctrine we've ever employed." The implications were staggering. The Galactic Federation represented the combined knowledge and military might of hundreds of civilizations, some of which had achieved spaceflight when stars were young. The idea that a single species had been secretly observing them all was beyond comprehension. Dr. Kelvox, the Federation's chief xenobiologist, activated his translation matrix. "Admiral, what do we know about human physiology? Perhaps their biology gives us some clue about their capabilities." Zefix's expression grew even more grim. "According to our captured data, humans evolved on a world they call Earth. By galactic standards, it's a death world. Gravity nearly twice what most species consider normal. An atmosphere with an oxygen concentration that would be toxic to many of our member species. Weather patterns so violent that they've created localized disasters with the power to level cities. And the humans not only survived on this world, they thrived." The Aquarian delegate, speaking through her water-filled communication sphere, bubbled nervously. "Surely that cannot account for their military superiority. Many species have evolved on challenging worlds." "True," Zefix acknowledged, "but humans didn't just adapt to their environment. They conquered it. Our intelligence suggests that before achieving spaceflight, humans had already survived multiple near-extinction events, fought wars that spanned continents, and developed weapons capable of rendering their entire planet uninhabitable. They achieved spaceflight not through peaceful exploration like most species, but as an escape route from their own destructive potential." The weight of this information settled over the chamber like a dark cloud. Most galactic civilizations had achieved space travel through curiosity, trade, or the gradual expansion of their territories. The humans had apparently reached for the stars while standing on the precipice of self-annihilation. Commander Vexus of the Military Sciences Division stood up, his insectoid features clicking with agitation. "Their origin world may explain their psychological profile, but it doesn't explain how they destroyed a Catherian fleet. What technologies do they possess?" "That's where things become truly terrifying," Zefix replied. "The few sensor readings we managed to transmit before our fleet was destroyed show that human ships don't rely on any technology we recognize. Their vessels appear to use some form of exotic matter manipulation for propulsion, creating localized distortions in space-time that make them effectively immune to our weapons while allowing them to strike with impossible precision." The Admiral brought up a tactical display showing the last moments of the Catherian fleet. The human vessels appeared as small blips on the screen, outnumbered 100 to 1, yet within minutes the display showed only human ships remaining. "Our dreadnought's shields, designed to withstand the full firepower of enemy battle fleets, didn't even slow down human weapons. Our quantum torpedoes, capable of cracking planets, seemed to pass harmlessly through their ships. It wasn't a battle. It was an extermination." Senator Quarlex of the Inner Worlds raised what might have been an arm, depending on one's understanding of alien anatomy. "Surely they must have some limitation. No species achieves such technological advancement without cost." "According to our analysis," Zefix continued, "humans appear to have developed their technology along entirely different principles than any known galactic civilization. Where we focused on energy efficiency and resource conservation, they developed systems based on what can only be described as controlled destruction. Their power sources seem to harness forces that we've deemed too dangerous to use. Their weapons don't just destroy targets, they unmake them at the molecular level." The chamber erupted in worried murmurs. The idea of weapons that operated on such a fundamental level was beyond the understanding of most species present. Director Maloth of the Federation Science Council processed this information through his cybernetic implants before speaking. "If their technology is so far advanced, why haven't they conquered the galaxy already? What's keeping them in their corner of space?" Zefix paused, consulting his datapad with obvious reluctance. "According to our intercepted communications, they're not interested in conquest. They view the rest of the galaxy as primitive. They've been content to observe us, study us, and ensure we don't interfere with their development. The message they sent with our survivors contained a detailed analysis of our civilizations, including our strengths, weaknesses, and projected technological development over the next 10,000 years. The silence that followed was deafening. The greatest civilizations in the galaxy, species that had mastered time travel, dimensional folding, and consciousness transfer, had been classified as primitive by a species they had never even acknowledged existed. Ambassador Lyrix's tentacles coiled with indignation. This is absurd! The Trade Consortium alone has maintained peaceful relations with over 10,000 different species. Our diplomatic protocols have prevented wars, facilitated technological exchange, and maintained galactic stability for millennia. How can they consider us primitive? Because, Zephyx said quietly, according to their analysis, every galactic civilization has followed essentially the same development pattern. We achieve spaceflight, we expand to nearby systems, we encounter other species and either fight or form alliances, and we gradually build larger and larger political structures, but we never fundamentally change. He activated another display, this one showing a complex flowchart that mapped the development of galactic civilizations over millions of years. Humans call it the convergence trap. They've observed that once a species achieves faster-than-light travel and encounters other galactic civilizations, their development becomes predictable. They adopt similar technologies, similar social structures, similar goals. Innovation slows and eventually stops because there's no pressure to develop beyond the galactic norm. The implications were staggering. Every species in the chamber had followed exactly the pattern Zephyx described, believing their development to be unique, while actually conforming to a template that the humans had apparently mapped out eons ago. Chancellor Mordak's voice rumbled with barely contained fury. You're suggesting that these humans have been deliberately avoiding contact with us to prevent their own stagnation? Not just avoiding contact, Zephyx confirmed, actively preventing it. Every time one of our species came close to discovering human space, they intervened. Equipment failures, navigational errors, mysterious disappearances, they've been protecting themselves from us. Dr. B. Kelvox's translation matrix sparked with rapid calculations. If their assessment is correct, then contact with galactic civilization would indeed limit their potential development. By remaining isolated, they've been free to pursue technological advancement without the constraints of galactic politics or the pressure to conform to established norms. The revelation that humanity had been deliberately quarantining itself from galactic civilization for protective rather than aggressive reasons was perhaps the most unsettling news yet. It implied that contact with the wider galaxy was seen not as an opportunity, but as a threat to human development. Governor Thale leaned back in his chair, his expression troubled. So, what you're telling us is that we've just forced contact with a species that has spent thousands of years specifically trying to avoid us, that considers us primitive, and that possesses technology so advanced it makes our greatest military achievements look like toys. That's correct, Zephyx replied. And according to the message they sent back with our survivors, they're not pleased about it. The chamber fell silent once again as the assembled delegates contemplated the magnitude of their situation. They had spent centuries believing themselves to be the masters of the galaxy, only to discover that they had been under observation by a species so advanced that they didn't even register as a potential threat. Ambassador Lyrix was the first to break the silence. What did the message say exactly? You mentioned a warning, but surely there was more? Zephyx nodded grimly and activated one final display. This time, instead of showing data or star charts, it simply displayed text. The words appeared in the native script of every species present, but the meaning was unmistakably clear. The message was brief, Zephyx said. It read, Your curiosity has exceeded your wisdom. We have tolerated your presence in this galaxy because you posed no threat to yourselves or others. That tolerance is no longer possible. You have 30 standard galactic days to demonstrate that you understand the consequences of forcing contact with civilizations beyond your current development level. Failure to do so will result in measures we would prefer not to take. The implications of the message hit the assembled delegates like a physical blow. Not only had humanity demonstrated the ability to completely destroy a major fleet, they were now demanding that the entire galactic community prove their worthiness to continue existing in the same space. Commander Vexus clicked his mandibles nervously. What kind of demonstration do they expect? How can we prove our understanding of consequences we don't even comprehend? Unknown, Zephix replied. But given their technological superiority and their apparent knowledge of our capabilities, I suspect they already know what they want to see from us. The question is whether we're capable of providing it. As the council chamber buzzed with panicked discussions and desperate strategizing, one fact became increasingly clear to everyone present. For the first time in galactic history, they were facing a species that was not only more advanced than any known civilization, but one that had been deliberately avoiding them for their own protection. The galaxy, which had seemed so vast and full of possibilities just hours before, suddenly felt very small indeed. The temporal displacement facility hidden deep within asteroid base Prometheus hummed with energy as Dr. Elena Vasquez made final adjustments to the quantum resonance chamber. Around her, dozens of human technicians worked with the quiet efficiency that had characterized their species' greatest achievements, their movements precise and purposeful despite the magnitude of what they were attempting. "Temporal anchor is stable," reported Lieutenant Commander Chen from his position at the primary control station. "We're locked onto the target time stream 3 hours before the Catherian fleet entered the outer edge of the Oort cloud." Dr. Vasquez nodded without looking up from her instruments. The decision to reveal themselves to galactic civilization had not been made lightly. For over 4,000 years, humanity had watched the galaxy's various species expand, develop, and ultimately stagnate within the comfortable boundaries of their collective mediocrity. The time had come to offer them a choice, though few humans believed the galaxy would choose wisely. "Dr. Vasquez," called out Captain Sarah Morrison from the observation deck above the main floor. "We're receiving confirmation from Temporal Observatory 7. The Catherian fleet's destruction has been recorded as a fixed point in space-time. The galactic response patterns are developing exactly as the probability matrices predicted." Vasquez finally looked up from her work, her dark eyes reflecting the glow of the temporal field generators. "Probability of successful intervention?" 14%, Captain Morrison replied without hesitation. "The same as it's been for the past 6 months of modeling. Most galactic species simply lack the cognitive flexibility to adapt to paradigm shifts of this magnitude." The truth was both simple and devastating. Humanity had not achieved their technological superiority through superior intelligence or even superior creativity. They had achieved it through necessity, through the constant pressure of existing on a world that seemed determined to destroy them, and through the unique psychological trait that their xenopsychologists had termed adaptive paranoia. While other species had achieved spaceflight and then relaxed into the comfortable patterns of galactic civilization, humans had continued to prepare for threats that might not even exist. They had developed technology based on worst-case scenarios, built redundancies upon redundancies, and never, ever stopped assuming that something worse was coming. "Initiate temporal viewing protocol," Dr. Vasquez ordered. "I want to see what they're doing right now." The main display shimmered and resolved into a view of the Galactic Federation's Emergency Council chamber, where representatives from across the galaxy were still debating their response to the human ultimatum. Dr. Vasquez watched with the detached interest of a scientist observing bacteria in a petri dish. Predictable, she murmured. They're focusing on military options and technological solutions. None of them are considering the fundamental problem. Captain Morrison descended from the observation deck to stand beside the temporal specialist. Which is? They're still thinking like galactic civilizations, Vasquez replied. They're trying to understand us within the framework of their existing knowledge base. They can't conceive of a development path that doesn't follow their established patterns. On the screen, Admiral Zephyx was presenting tactical analyses to the assembled delegates, showing simulations of various fleet configurations and weapon systems that might potentially challenge human defenses. The futility of the exercise was apparent to anyone who understood the true scope of human technological development. "Sir," Lieutenant Commander Chen called out from his station, "we're detecting quantum communication pulses from 17 different galactic governments. They're attempting to coordinate a joint response." Dr. Vasquez nodded. It was exactly what the prediction models had anticipated. Faced with a threat beyond their understanding, the galactic civilizations would fall back on their most fundamental instinct, banding together to overwhelm the problem with sheer numbers. "How many ships are they assembling?" Captain Morrison asked. Chen consulted his readouts. "Current projections suggest a combined fleet of approximately 15,000 vessels from 23 different species. They're calling it the Grand Alliance Fleet." 15,000, Dr. Vasquez repeated thoughtfully. "Interesting. The probability models predicted 14,700. We're running slightly above baseline hostility levels." The casual way she discussed the potential destruction of the largest military force in galactic history would have horrified most non-human observers. But for humanity, this was simply another day of preparing for the worst while hoping for something better. "Dr. Vasquez," came a voice from the communication station, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Director Harrison at Luna Base. He's requesting an update on the Galactic Integration Protocol." Vasquez activated her personal communication device. "Tell the director that we're proceeding with the standard revelation sequence. The galaxy is responding exactly as predicted, and we should have definitive results within the next 72 hours. What the galactic civilizations didn't understand, what they couldn't understand given their development patterns, was that humanity's isolation had not been about protecting themselves from galactic technology or ideas. It had been about protecting their ability to think in ways that galactic civilization would consider impossible or insane. "Display the developmental comparison charts," Dr. Vasquez ordered. The main screen shifted to show a complex three-dimensional graph that tracked technological development across thousands of different parameters. The galactic civilizations formed a tight cluster near the bottom of the scale, their development paths converging toward a stable but limited plateau. Humanity's development curve was a sharp spike that extended far beyond the graph's normal boundaries. "The fundamental difference," Dr. Vasquez explained to the technicians gathered around the temporal chamber, "is that galactic civilizations develop technology to solve problems they currently face. Humans develop technology to solve problems we might face in hypothetical scenarios that may never occur." She gestured toward a section of the graph that showed military technology development. When galactic species achieve spaceflight, they develop weapons to fight other species with similar technology levels. When humans achieved spaceflight, we immediately began developing weapons to fight enemies that might exist in other dimensions, other timelines, or other universes entirely. Lieutenant Commander Chen looked up from his calculations. "Is that why we developed the Reality Anchor Network? To prepare for threats that don't exist yet?" "Exactly," Dr. Vasquez confirmed. While the galactic civilizations were congratulating themselves on achieving faster-than-light travel, we were developing defenses against entities that might use the quantum foam substrate as an attack vector. While they were building trade networks, we were creating temporal stabilization fields to prevent causality weapons from erasing our past. The scope of human preparation was truly staggering. They had spent millennia developing countermeasures for threats that existed only in theoretical physics papers. They had built defenses against attack methods that required technologies no known civilization possessed. They had prepared for wars against enemies that existed only in mathematical models. "Sir," called the communications technician, "we're getting reports from our monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. The various species are beginning to share technological data in preparation for their joint assault. They're planning something called Operation Cosmic Unity." Dr. Vasquez couldn't suppress a slight smile. "Cosmic Unity? How perfectly galactic of them." She turned to Captain Morrison. "Captain, please prepare a quantum message to be delivered to Admiral Zephyx personally. It's time for the second phase of our revelation sequence." As Captain Morrison moved to carry out her orders, Dr. Vasquez reflected on the irony of humanity's situation. They had achieved technological superiority not through conquest or aggression, but through an almost pathological need to be prepared for anything. While other species had learned to trust in the stability of galactic civilization, humans had never stopped expecting everything to go wrong. "Message ready for transmission," Captain Morrison reported. "Should I include the standard diplomatic protocols?" "No," Dr. Vasquez replied. "Send it exactly as written. They need to understand that we're not operating within their diplomatic framework." The message that flickered across space to the Galactic Federation's Emergency Council was brief, direct, and utterly unlike anything in the established patterns of galactic communication. "Your military preparations are noted and irrelevant. The test we have proposed does not involve your ability to wage war, as you have already demonstrated that such capabilities are insufficient. Instead, you must demonstrate your ability to think beyond the limitations you have imposed upon yourselves. You have 26 days remaining." Back in the council chamber, Admiral Zephyx read the message aloud to the assembled delegates, his voice growing quieter with each word. The implications were clear. Humanity was not only unimpressed by the largest military alliance in galactic history, they were suggesting that the solution to their test lay in an entirely different direction. Dr. Vasquez watched the galactic representatives dissolve into panicked arguments and desperate strategizing. Some called for immediate attacks before the human deadline expired. Others suggested attempting to negotiate or surrender. A few, showing slightly more wisdom than their colleagues, proposed trying to understand what kind of demonstration the humans actually wanted. "Probability of successful breakthrough?" Captain Morrison asked. Dr. Vasquez consulted the quantum prediction matrices. "Still holding at 14%. However, we're detecting some interesting anomalies in the data stream from 3 specific locations." "Which locations?" "The Terralian Crystal Gardens, the Aquarian Deep Think Pools, and surprisingly, the Vorthan Energy Collective. All 3 are showing probability fluctuations that suggest at least some individuals in those civilizations are beginning to think outside their normal parameters." This was encouraging news. The Terralian, Aquarian, and Vorthan civilizations were among the most ancient in the galaxy, with development histories spanning millions of years. If anyone was capable of the kind of cognitive breakthrough that humanity was testing for, it would likely come from one of these 3 species. "Should we provide additional guidance?" Lieutenant Commander Chen asked. "No," Dr. Vasquez replied firmly. "The entire point of this exercise is to determine whether galactic civilization is capable of independent cognitive evolution. Any assistance from us would invalidate the results." The temporal viewing screen shifted to show the Terralian Crystal Gardens, where Ambassador Lyrix was engaged in what appeared to be intense contemplation within a chamber filled with resonating crystals. The Terralian approach to complex problems involved harmonizing their consciousness with quantum crystalline matrices, allowing them to perceive patterns and solutions that existed beyond normal intellectual analysis. "Fascinating," Dr. Vasquez murmured. "She's beginning to approach the problem from a non-causal perspective." If she can maintain that thought pattern without reverting to conventional logic. The screen split to show the Aquarian deep think pools, where several of that species' greatest philosophers were engaged in their traditional problem-solving ritual of synchronized swimming through memory-enhanced water. Their collective consciousness was exploring conceptual territories that no individual Aquarian could navigate alone. The third section of the screen showed the Vorthan Energy Collective, where beings of pure energy were attempting something unprecedented, temporarily merging their consciousness patterns to create a hybrid intelligence capable of processing information in ways that none of their individual species could achieve. These three groups represent the galaxy's best hope, Captain Morrison observed. If they can't make the necessary breakthrough, then our integration protocol will have to move to the final phase. Dr. Vasquez nodded grimly. The final phase of humanity's integration protocol was something they had hoped to avoid. It involved revealing not just their technological superiority, but the true scope of their preparations for galactic contact. Most humans believed that such a revelation would cause complete civilizational collapse among the galactic species, potentially setting their development back by millennia. "Sir," the communications technician called out, "we're receiving emergency transmissions from monitoring stations Alpha through Omega. The galactic species are beginning to deploy some kind of quantum resonance weapon. Their combined fleets are moving toward the outer edges of our space." Dr. Vasquez sighed. Despite having been warned that military solutions were irrelevant, the galactic civilizations were still planning to attack. It was exactly the kind of predictable response that had led humanity to classify them as cognitively limited in the first place. "Activate Defensive Protocol 7, she ordered. "Prepare to demonstrate why their weapons won't work without actually harming any of their personnel. We want to discourage them, not traumatize them." As the defensive systems came online throughout human space, Dr. Vasquez reflected on the fundamental tragedy of the situation. Humanity had reached for the stars not out of curiosity or wonder, but out of fear and desperation. They had developed incredible technologies not to build a better future, but to survive in an uncertain universe. And now, when they finally made contact with galactic civilization, they were discovering that their paranoid preparations had been more necessary than they had ever imagined. "Timeline update," Lieutenant Commander Chen reported. 24 days, 16 hours until the deadline. No significant changes in galactic response patterns. Dr. Vasquez looked at the probability matrices one final time. 14%. The same number that had haunted their calculations for months. 14% chance that the galaxy would surprise them. 14% chance that this first contact would lead to mutual growth and development rather than the cognitive stagnation that had characterized galactic civilization for millions of years. "Continue monitoring," she ordered, "and prepare contingency protocols for all possible outcomes. If we're going to reshape galactic civilization, we need to be ready for anything." As the technicians returned to their work and the temporal viewing screens continued their silent observation of a galaxy struggling to understand its place in a suddenly much larger universe, Dr. Vasquez couldn't help but wonder whether humanity's greatest achievement might ultimately prove to be its greatest curse. Ambassador Lyrics had spent the last 18 standard days in a state of deep crystalline meditation, her consciousness suspended between the quantum resonance fields that filled the Terralian crystal gardens. Around her, towering formations of living crystal pulsed with harmonized frequencies, each one representing a different aspect of the impossible problem humanity had presented to the galaxy. The breakthrough came not as a sudden revelation, but as a gradual shift in perspective that began when she stopped trying to understand humans as another galactic species and started considering what it would mean to develop completely outside the galactic framework. "The question isn't how they became so powerful," she whispered to the crystals, her words creating new harmonic patterns in the resonance field. "The question is why we never did." In the depths of the Aquarian homeworld, the Deep Think Collective had reached a similar conclusion through an entirely different path. Their synchronized consciousness had been exploring the mathematical foundations of galactic civilization, tracing development patterns across millions of years and hundreds of species, when they discovered something that shook them to their aquatic core. Every galactic civilization, without exception, had followed virtually identical development curves. The variations were minor, insignificant details of timing and specific technologies, but the overall pattern was always the same. Achieve spaceflight, encounter other species, join the galactic community, and then stop innovating. Master philosopher Quendall surfaced from the memory-enhanced waters with a realization that would change everything. "We haven't been growing," she announced to her colleagues. "We've been converging. For millions of years, we've been slowly becoming identical to each other." Meanwhile, in the energy storms of the Vorthan Collective's home dimension, 3 of their greatest minds had achieved something unprecedented. By temporarily merging their consciousness patterns, they had created a hybrid intelligence capable of perceiving the galactic development problem from multiple perspectives simultaneously. The revelation that emerged from their union was devastating in its simplicity. Galactic civilization was not a collection of diverse species working together for mutual benefit. It was a convergence trap that gradually eliminated the unique characteristics that made each species valuable, replacing innovation with comfortable conformity. "We have been dying slowly," the merged consciousness announced to the collective. "And we called it civilization." While these 3 ancient species grappled with the implications of their discoveries, the Grand Alliance fleet continued its advance toward human space. 15,000 ships from 23 different civilizations, armed with every weapon technology the galaxy had ever developed, moved in perfect formation toward what their commanders believed would be the final battle for galactic supremacy. Admiral Zephyx stood on the bridge of the Alliance flagship, watching long-range sensors track their progress toward the edge of human space. Despite the growing philosophical doubts being raised by the Terralians, Aquarians, and Vorthans, the military leadership of the galaxy remained convinced that overwhelming force would solve their human problem. "Quantum resonance weapons are charged and ready," reported Commander Vexus from the weapons control station. "All fleet elements report combat readiness." "Any response from human space?" Admiral Zephyx asked. "Nothing, sir. No defensive deployments, no communication attempts, no apparent reaction to our approach at all." The silence from human space was more unnerving than any show of force would have been. For 3 days, the largest military formation in galactic history had been advancing toward what should have been the most heavily defended region of space in the galaxy, and the humans had done absolutely nothing. "Sir," called the sensor officer, "we're approaching the boundary of the solar system. Range to nearest human settlement is approximately 12 light-years. Admiral Zephyx nodded grimly. "All ships, prepare for—" He never finished the order. Without warning, without any detectable energy signatures or weapon discharges, every single ship in the Grand Alliance fleet simply stopped moving. Not slowed down, not disabled, but frozen in space as if they had become part of the cosmic background itself. Emergency klaxons should have been sounding. Damage control teams should have been scrambling to identify the cause of the malfunction. Instead, there was only silence as 15,000 ships hung motionless in the void, their crews conscious and aware, but unable to move, speak, or even think about taking hostile action. Dr. Elena Vasquez watched the peaceful neutralization of the galactic fleet from her command station at asteroid base Prometheus, her expression showing mild satisfaction at the performance of humanity's non-violent containment systems. "Temporal stasis fields are holding steady," reported Lieutenant Commander Chen. "All fleet personnel are unharmed and will experience no permanent effects once the fields are released." "Any panic responses from the galactic governments?" Captain Morrison asked. Surprisingly, no, Dr. Vasquez replied after consulting her communications display. The three species showing cognitive breakthrough patterns have actually requested emergency sessions with their respective leadership councils. They're beginning to understand what we're trying to teach them. The revelation that was spreading through the most advanced galactic civilizations was both humbling and terrifying. For millions of years, they had believed themselves to be the masters of their own destiny, the architects of galactic progress, the pinnacle of cosmic evolution. In reality, they had become trapped in a self-reinforcing cycle of mediocrity that prevented any real advancement. Ambassador Lyrics emerged from her crystalline meditation chamber with an understanding that crystal song could barely express. The Terralian concept of harmony had always focused on achieving balance between different elements, but she now realized they had been harmonizing themselves into stagnation. "We must break the convergence pattern," she announced to the Emergency Crystal Council, her words creating discordant harmonies that hurt to hear, but somehow rang with truth. "We must learn to be different again." In the Aquarian deep think pools, Master Philosopher Quendall was presenting her findings to an assembly of the greatest minds in aquatic civilization. Her conclusions challenged everything they believed about progress and development. "Every time we encountered a new species," she explained, "we gained some of their knowledge and they gained some of ours. Over time, we all became more alike, more predictable, more limited. The humans avoided this trap by avoiding us entirely. The Vorthan Energy Collective faced perhaps the greatest challenge of all. Their entire civilization was based on the concept of unity through shared consciousness, but they were discovering that their greatest strength had also become their greatest weakness. Individual perspective creates innovation," announced the merged consciousness that had achieved the breakthrough. "We must learn to maintain separation within unity, to preserve the unique viewpoints that make progress possible." Back at asteroid base Prometheus, Dr. Vasquez received reports on the philosophical revolutions beginning to spread throughout galactic civilization. The probability matrices showed encouraging changes, but the deadline was approaching rapidly. 6 days remaining, she announced to the assembled technical staff. Current probability of successful integration has increased to 37%. It was the highest probability they had recorded since beginning the integration protocol, but it was still far from certain. The galactic species were beginning to understand the problem, but understanding and solving were entirely different challenges. "Should we provide additional guidance?" Captain Morrison asked. "Not yet," Dr. Vasquez replied. "They need to reach the solution themselves, or it won't be a real solution." The solution, when it came, emerged simultaneously from 3 different locations across the galaxy. The Terralian Crystal Council, the Aquarian Deep Think Collective, and the Vorthan Energy Assembly all reached the same conclusion within hours of each other, despite having no communication between them. The answer wasn't to fight the humans, negotiate with them, or even understand them. The answer was to stop being galactic civilizations and start being something new. Ambassador Lyric sent the first message from the Crystal Gardens. "We propose the dissolution of the Galactic Federation and the establishment of independent development zones. Each species must be free to pursue its own path without convergence pressure." Master Philosopher Quendall transmitted her,